Captain Jake Morrison sat in the dark communication room of the Earth Defense Fleet's main station, staring at the blinking red light on his screen. The message had arrived 3 hours ago, and he still could not believe what he was reading. His hands shook as he played the transmission again. The voice on the other end was broken, desperate, filled with pain. Anyone who receives this, the invasion is coming. I am Captain Xerox of the Couturian Explorer Corps. My ship was intercepted at the outer boundary. They are many. They are fast. They are hungry for conquest. I am the last survivor of my crew. They will reach human space in 40 days. Tell your people to prepare. Tell them what I tell you now. The Allied Council will not help you. The Council thinks you are nothing. I die now. May whatever gods you have protect your world. The transmission ended with a sound of explosion. Static filled the speakers. Jake replayed it 3 more times, each time hoping the message would change. But it never did. Jake was not a young man anymore. He had served in the Earth Defense Fleet for 23 years. He had seen space battles, diplomatic missions, and the slow, painful growth of human influence in the galaxy. He knew the politics of the 6 galactic empires better than most men on Earth. He knew that the Allied Council had never taken humanity seriously. Humans were the newcomers to space. Humans were the ones without ancient technology. Humans were the primitives. But this message changed everything. He left the communication room and moved quickly through the corridors of the station. The hallways were quiet. Most of the crew was asleep. The time was 0230 hours. Nobody was expecting bad news at this hour. Jake did not care. He had to reach Admiral Patricia Lynch before the morning briefing. If he waited, if he delayed even 1 hour, it could cost them everything. Admiral Lynch's quarters were on the upper level. Jake punched the access code and the door slid open. The Admiral was sitting at her desk, reviewing reports. She looked up, surprised to see the captain at this hour. "Jake, what is wrong?" Patricia Lynch was a woman of 51 years, with gray hair tied back in a braid. Her eyes were sharp and quick. She had commanded the Earth Defense Fleet for 7 years, and under her leadership, human space had become stronger and more organized. Jake explained everything. He told her about the Couturian Explorer, about the invasion force, about the 40-day warning. He played the transmission for her twice. Admiral Lynch listened without interrupting. When the message ended, she was quiet for a long moment. "The Council will not believe this," she said finally. "No," Jake agreed. "But we have to try. We have to tell them." "I will call an emergency session," Patricia said, standing up. "Gather the senior commanders. We meet in 1 hour." The conference room filled quickly. 12 senior military commanders sat around the table, all of them confused about why they had been called to an urgent meeting at 0300 hours. Jake stood at the front of the room and played the transmission again. The room was completely silent. Commander Robert James spoke first. "This could be a trick. An enemy trying to make us afraid." "It could be," Jake agreed. "But what if it is not? What if this threat is real?" "Then we have 40 days to prepare," said Commander Sarah Chun. "What can we do in 40 days that we have not already done?" Jake and Admiral Patricia had already discussed this. They had a plan, and it was desperate. It was dangerous. It might not work, but it was all they had. "We cannot fight them in open space," Jake said. "They will be faster. They will be stronger. They will have numbers. But we can set a trap. We can force them into human space, into areas where we control the environment. We can use the asteroid fields near the outer mining colonies. We can use the communication network to coordinate our forces. We can make them think they are winning, and then we crush them when they are close to our territory. That plan will get millions of people killed, Commander James said. Yes, Jake said. He did not soften the words. He did not pretend this would be easy. It will. But if we do nothing, if we let them come into human space without preparation, they will kill billions. They will take our world. They will destroy everything we have built. Admiral Patricia spoke then. I am ordering a full mobilization. Every ship we have will move to the outer boundary. We begin fortification of the Mayan colonies immediately. All civilians in the danger zones must be evacuated. We have 40 days. We use them. Not every commander agreed with the plan. Several of them wanted to contact the Galactic Council first to ask for help. But Admiral Patricia shut down that idea quickly. The Council has made it clear that Earth is not important to them, she said. The Council thinks we are children playing with space travel. They will not help us. They will tell us to surrender or to negotiate. We are done asking for help. We defend ourselves. Over the next 40 days, Earth mobilized like it had never mobilized before. Factories worked day and night. Ships that had been in repair were rushed into service. The military brought people out of retirement. Young people who had never thought of joining the military signed up to fight. The entire planet knew what was coming. But something strange happened. Instead of fear destroying people, fear made them strong. Families worked together. Cities organized defense plans. Scientists and engineers came up with new ideas. The old mining asteroids that had been abandoned were brought back to life. The communication satellites that had been left in space for decades were refitted and repurposed. Jake moved through the preparations like a man in a dream. He had spent his entire career preparing for a moment like this, and now the moment had come. He trained pilots. He organized fleet movements. He studied the enemy's probable tactics. On day 39, he stood on the observation deck of the space station and looked out at the Earth below. It was blue and green and beautiful. Somewhere down there, his daughter was in school. His ex-wife was at work. His sister was taking care of her children. All of them were waiting to see if humanity would survive what was coming. Jake Morrison had never believed in gods, but at that moment, he found himself hoping that whatever gods existed were watching. Because tomorrow, the invasion would begin. Tomorrow, humanity would find out if it had what it took to survive. Tomorrow, Jake would find out if his plan would work, or if it would lead to the destruction of his entire species. The red light of the communication system blinked softly in the distance. Somewhere in space, an invasion fleet moved closer with every passing second. The warning had been given. The time for preparation had ended. Now it was time to fight. The alien fleet appeared exactly when the calculations said it would appear. 41 days after the warning, the long-range sensors picked up their approach. Commander Kyle Harris sat in the command center of the invasion fleet, looking at the tactical display. His species, the Krell, had conquered 17 star systems in the past 100 years. They had never lost a war. They had never met resistance they could not crush. Kyle was confident. The human world was primitive. The human ships were slow. The human weapons were outdated. The data the Council had shared made this clear. This invasion would take weeks, not months. The humans would either surrender or die. There was no third option. Begin the assault on the outer colonies, Kyle ordered. Destroy their defense platforms. Bring them to their knees. The Krell invasion fleet moved forward like a giant predator moving toward helpless prey. They had 300 ships. The humans had less than 50. The math was simple. The outcome was certain. But something was wrong. The first Krell attack group moved into the outer mining sector and found defenses that should not have been there. Ancient asteroids had been fitted with energy weapons. They fired with surprising accuracy. The Krell ships moved to engage these targets. But every time they got close, the asteroids exploded. More asteroids rose up to take their place. What is happening? Kyle demanded from the flagship. The asteroids are mining equipment, his intelligence officer reported. The humans have converted mining machinery into weapons platforms. The defenses are primitive but numerous. Kyle felt the first small touch of concern. Numerous defenses could be a problem, but they could be solved with enough firepower. The invasion fleet changed tactics. They stopped attacking individual targets and instead began a full bombardment of the mining sector. Asteroids exploded under the energy of Krell weapons. The human defense platforms were destroyed one by one. It seemed that humanity's first attempt at defense was failing. Then something unexpected happened. The humans stopped defending the asteroids. Instead, they moved their ships into the debris field. Captain Jake Morrison led the first human response squadron. He was flying a relatively new ship, fast and agile, with maneuverability that the old Krell ships could not match. The humans had studied Krell tactics for years. They knew that the alien ships were built for overwhelming firepower and direct assault. They were not built for the kind of close-range, chaotic fighting that a debris field created. Jake's squadron moved through the asteroid debris like ghosts. They appeared, fired at Krell ships, and disappeared again before the aliens could lock on weapons. The strategy was simple. Do not fight in the way the enemy expects to fight. A young pilot named Lucas was flying near Jake's wing. He was only 24 years old, and this was his first real combat operation. When his communication system lit up, he heard Jake's calm voice giving orders. Stay close to the debris. Use it for cover. Fire and move. Fire and move. Do not stay in one place long enough for them to target you. Lucas followed the orders exactly. He fired his weapons at a Krell fighter, saw it explode, and moved away before enemy weapons could reach him. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might burst from his chest. This was not training. This was real. People were dying. Ships were exploding. And then something went wrong with his weapon system. The console started smoking. Alarms sounded in his cockpit. Lucas looked at the tactical display and saw a massive Krell dreadnought moving toward him. It was 1,000 times bigger than his small fighter. Its weapons were locking onto his position. Lucas could have ejected. He could have abandoned his ship. That would have been the logical choice. But he looked at the dreadnought and thought about what lay beyond it. Behind that ship was Earth. Behind that ship were his parents. Behind that ship were millions of people who were counting on him. He pushed his ship forward instead of backward. The dreadnought's weapons were huge and powerful, but they were designed to attack from a distance. They were not designed to attack something that was flying directly at them. Lucas's small fighter was too fast, too small, too hard to target. He moved closer and closer. The distance between his ship and the dreadnought closed from 1,000 kilometers to 100 kilometers to 10 kilometers. At 5 kilometers, Lucas hit the ejection button and jumped from his ship. His small fighter continued forward on autopilot. He had rigged it to accelerate at maximum speed. The dreadnought's captain saw the small ship approaching and ordered evasion maneuvers. But the ship was too big, too slow. The fighter smashed into the dreadnought's engine section at enormous speed. The explosion was visible from the mining colonies. The massive alien ship broke into 2 pieces and fell toward the asteroid field. 1,000 Krell soldiers died in the seconds that followed. And Lucas, falling through space with his suit's small thrusters barely keeping him alive, was picked up 30 seconds later by a rescue ship. Commander Kyle Harris stared at his tactical display in shock. One of his dreadnoughts had been destroyed by a single human pilot in a fighter that should have been helpless. By a pilot who had crashed his own ship into the enemy rather than retreat. Pull back, Kyle ordered. All squadrons retreat to safe distance. The Krell fleet moved backward. For the first time since the invasion began, they were not advancing. The humans had stopped them. The humans had destroyed one of their greatest weapons. The humans had shown that they would do things that made no logical sense. Things that risked everything. Things that could not be calculated or predicted. Kyle Harris transmitted a message back to the Krell homeworld. The invasion is proceeding slower than expected. The humans have adapted their tactics. Request additional support. The message would take 3 weeks to reach home and another 3 weeks to get a response. Kyle realized that the invasion would not be over in weeks. It might take months. The humans were not going to surrender. They were not going to be crushed easily. They were going to fight, and they were going to fight with a kind of desperation that the Krell had never encountered before. A kind of desperation that made humans do impossible things. A kind of desperation that made them dangerous. Kyle Harris had invaded 17 star systems. But he had never invaded a world where the people loved their homes so much that they would crash their own ships into the enemy rather than surrender. He had never invaded a world like Earth. And now, as he studied the tactical display and watched the human ships moving like a school of predators through the debris field, he began to understand that this invasion might not end the way he thought it would. The first real battle of the Human-Krell War had ended. The humans had not won, exactly, but they had not lost. And in space warfare, a draw against an enemy with overwhelming numbers was almost as good as a victory. 3 weeks into the invasion, Admiral Patricia Lynch stood in the command center and studied the ongoing battles with growing confidence. The Krell had not defeated them. The Krell had not even come close to defeating them. And now the humans were beginning to understand something important. The Krell were powerful, but they were not unstoppable. Status report, Patricia said to her officers. Commander David Grant answered. We have destroyed 47 enemy ships. We have lost 11 of our own. The Krell are changing their tactics. They are no longer attacking all at once. They are using smaller strike groups. Patricia nodded. She had expected this. The Krell were learning, adapting, becoming more careful. But they still did not understand the most important thing. They did not understand what they were facing. The humans were fighting for survival. The humans were fighting for their homes. The humans were fighting for their children and their families and their future. When you fight for those things, you do not give up. You do not back down. You do not surrender. The Krell were fighting for conquest. For resources. For glory. Those things were important, but they were not as important as home. Not as important as family. Not as important as survival. Patricia had made a decision. She was going to turn the Krell's own technology against them. She had a secret weapon, something the Krell did not know about. A scientist named Maya Kim had developed a weapon that required no physical force to work. Maya Kim was a computer scientist who had spent the last 3 weeks developing a virus, a piece of code that could attack Krell computer systems. The Krell ships were run by artificial intelligence. The ships made decisions based on tactical data and calculated responses. If Maya could corrupt that data, if she could make the Krell ships see false information, the Krell fleet would start making mistakes. Put Maya on communications, Patricia ordered. A moment later, a young woman appeared on the video screen. Maya was 32 years old, and she had never been in a military facility before the invasion. She had been working in a technology corporation in the United States. Now she was Earth's best hope. The virus is ready, Maya said. We can deploy it through the communication networks. The Krell use radio frequencies to communicate between ships. If we can get the virus into one of their communications hubs, it will spread to all of their ships within hours. Will it work? Patricia asked. It should work, Maya said. But there is a risk. Once we deploy it, they will know we have hacked their system. They will change their protocols. We will only have one chance to use this effectively. Patricia made the decision. Deploy it when the next Krell attack begins. We want them distracted. We want them focused on the battle. That is when they will not notice the virus spreading through their network. The opportunity came 2 days later. The Krell launched a massive assault on the northern human colonies. Their ships attacked in waves, trying to overwhelm human defenses through sheer numbers. It was the perfect moment. Patricia gave the signal, and Maya launched the virus. For 6 hours, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the Krell attack began to fall apart. Krell ships started moving into collision courses with each other. Weapons fired at empty space. Commands were not being followed correctly. The Krell fleet descended into chaos. Commander Kyle Harris in the alien flagship realized something was wrong. His ships were not responding correctly. His tactical display showed contradictory information. Something was attacking their systems, something invisible, something that could not be destroyed with weapons. "We are under electronic attack," he shouted. All ships switched to manual controls. Shut down the artificial intelligence systems. But it was too late. The virus had already spread to most of the fleet. Even as manual controls kicked in, the humans were already attacking. With the Krell fleet in disarray, the human ships moved through their formations like hunters moving through a herd of confused prey. That day, the Krell lost 83 ships. The humans lost only 5. For the first time in the war, it seemed that humanity had a real chance to win. But victory required more than hacking systems and creating confusion. It required courage. It required sacrifice. It required people willing to die for their world. Over the next week, the pattern repeated itself. The Krell would attack, Maya would disrupt their communications, and the humans would strike back hard. With each battle, the humans grew more confident. With each battle, the Krell lost more ships. But the Krell were numerous. They kept coming. And slowly, Patricia realized something dangerous. The Krell would eventually figure out how to stop the virus. Or they would adapt to the new tactics. Or they would simply bring in more ships than humans could kill. She needed a different strategy. Something that would break the Krell completely. Something that would make them decide that invading human space was not worth the cost. Patricia called together her best tactical officers. They included Jake Morrison, Maya Kim, and a brilliant young woman named Sarah Kim, who had become the best fighter pilot in the human fleet. Sarah had shot down more Krell fighters than anyone else. She was fearless, aggressive, and willing to take risks that other pilots would not consider. "We need a coordinated assault," Patricia said. "We need to attack their flagship. If we can kill their command structure, if we can disrupt their ability to command the fleet, they might retreat." "That is a suicide mission," Jake said. "Probably," Patricia agreed. "But I am not asking for volunteers. I am giving orders. Sarah, you will lead the fighter squadrons. Jake, you will command the capital ships. Maya, you will ensure their communications are disrupted. We attack in 3 days. We end this war." 3 days of preparation followed. The human forces gathered, organized, prepared for the biggest battle of the war. Ships that had been damaged in previous battles were repaired. Weapons were loaded. Pilots were briefed. And 3 days later, the humans attacked. The assault was brutal and direct. Hundreds of human ships moved toward the Krell flagship. The Krell tried to defend, but their system was still partially corrupted by the virus. Their defenses were not coordinated. Their responses were slow. Sarah Kim's fighter squadron moved like a predator pack around the flagship, attacking from multiple angles, forcing the Krell point defense systems to spread too thin. The capital ships moved in behind the fighters, their weapons tearing into the flagship's armor. For 2 hours, the battle raged. Then, finally, the Krell flagship exploded. Commander Kyle Harris and his entire command staff died in the explosion. When the other Krell ships realized their flagship was gone, when they realized their commander was dead, something broke. The Krell fleet stopped attacking. The Krell fleet started moving toward the jump gates that would take them back to Krell space. They were retreating. The humans had won. Commander Kyle Harris had been dead for only 3 hours when the decision was made in the Krell home world. The political leaders, the military commanders, the Council of Elders, all of them gathered in a chamber thousands of light years away from the battle. They had received the message about the loss of the flagship. They had received the report about the human attacks. They had received the intelligence that the invasion was failing. The Krell had conquered 17 star systems. The Krell had never faced defeat. But now, looking at the tactical data, looking at the casualty figures, the leaders knew they had to make a choice. They could retreat and lose the war. Or they could send the ultimate weapon, the Void Reaper, and finish this once and for all. The Void Reaper was the largest ship in the Krell fleet. It was 5 kilometers long. It could destroy an entire city with a single weapon discharge. It had never been defeated. It had never been seriously damaged. The Void Reaper was the physical embodiment of Krell military power. The order went out. The Void Reaper was summoned from the deep reserves and sent toward human space. It would take 2 weeks to arrive, but when it did, the invasion would be over. The humans would be crushed. The war would end. Admiral Patricia Lynch received intelligence reports about the Void Reaper 3 days after it left Krell space. The news was bad. A ship that large, that powerful, could not be defeated by normal means. The human fleet did not have weapons capable of penetrating its armor. The human forces did not have the power to stop it. But Patricia did not feel defeated. Patricia felt something else. She felt calm, because Patricia had spent her life fighting for survival, and she knew something that the Krell did not know. Sometimes you did not defeat a ship by fighting it with other ships. Sometimes you defeated it by being willing to destroy yourself. Patricia called Jake Morrison to her office. Jake had become the hero of the human resistance. After the death of Kyle Harris, Jake had assumed command of the human fleet. He had coordinated the attacks that pushed the Krell out of 3 contested territories. He was the human that the Krell feared most. "I need you to listen to me carefully," Patricia said. "I am asking you to do something that is going to be difficult. I am asking you to do something that might cost you your life. But it is the only way to save Earth." Jake listened. He always listened when Patricia spoke. Patricia explained the plan. The orbital station that circled Earth was an old structure, built decades ago, now mostly unused. But that station could be filled with nuclear weapons. That station could be sent on a collision course with the Void Reaper. "That station will be destroyed," Patricia said. "Everyone on it will die. The impact will be tremendous, but it is the only weapon we have that is powerful enough to damage a ship that size." Jake said nothing for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I will do it," he said. The preparation took 5 days. The nuclear weapons were moved from human military bases to the orbital station. The station was brought online, its engines tested, its controls aligned for a collision course with the Void Reaper. Everything was ready. Jake Morrison volunteered to pilot the station for the first 2 days, to ensure the collision course was calculated correctly. Only after the calculations were confirmed would he eject. Or that was the plan. In reality, Jake had no intention of ejecting. He was going to ride the station all the way to impact. "Your daughter deserves a father," Patricia said to him. "You need to come back alive." "Earth deserves a future," Jake replied. "Right now, that is more important than anything else." 2 days before impact, Jake manually guided the station into final collision alignment. Then he sat in the pilot's chair, looked at the Void Reaper on the distant sensors, and understood that he was not going to survive this. That was acceptable. Some things were more important than survival. He ejected from the station at the last moment, only moments before the collision. He fired his small escape pod toward one of the human rescue ships. The station, on full autopilot, continued forward. The Void Reaper's captain was a being named Throg, a Krell of ancient bloodline and tremendous pride. He had commanded the Void Reaper for 30 years. He had never accepted retreat. He had never accepted compromise. When he saw the small human station moving toward him on the sensors, he was not concerned. His weapons would destroy it easily. "Eliminate that station," Throg ordered. The weapons fired. The human station exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Throg nodded with satisfaction. The threat was eliminated, but something was wrong. The station did not disappear. The explosion had broken it apart, but the pieces continued forward. The radioactive debris, the shattered reactor, the fragments of the station itself, all of it continued forward at tremendous speed. And behind that debris came the nuclear weapons, hundreds of them, detonating in a cascading chain of explosions. The Void Reaper tried to move out of the way, but it was too large. It was too slow. The explosions caught the ship and tore into its hull. The armor, built to withstand weapons fired from a distance, could not withstand the force of multiple nuclear detonations at point-blank range. The Void Reaper, the greatest ship in the Krell fleet, broke apart. Throg died in the explosion, along with 10,000 Krell soldiers. When the remaining Krell ships saw what had happened, when they understood that the humans had been willing to destroy their own space station, their own home structure, just to eliminate one enemy ship, they finally understood the truth. They understood what they had been fighting. They understood what made humans different. Humans did not fight for resources or conquest. Humans did not fight for pride or glory. Humans fought for home. And humans would destroy anything, including themselves, to protect their home. That was a kind of enemy the Krell had never encountered before. That was an enemy that could not be defeated by having bigger weapons or more ships dot the remaining Krell fleet. The survivors of the invasion turned away from Earth. They began moving toward the jump gates that would take them back to Krell space. They were retreating. They were running away. They were abandoning the invasion, and every human who was watching understood the same thing. The invasion was over. Earth had survived. Humanity had won, not through superior technology, not through greater numbers, but through willingness to sacrifice, through determination to protect what mattered, through the understanding that some things were worth dying for. Jake Morrison, floating in his escape pod, watched the Void Reaper explode. He watched the enemy fleet begin their retreat. He thought about the people on Earth below. He thought about his daughter. He thought about the future that he had helped to protect, and then he allowed himself to cry. The Krell retreated, but they did not leave quietly. Jake Morrison and Admiral Patricia Lynch understood that letting them escape was a risk they could not take. Fleeing ships could reach home, could report what had happened, could convince the Krell leadership that they should send more forces. Or worse, they could tell other alien species about Earth's defenses, about the strategies that worked against them. No survivors could be allowed to leave human space. Lieutenant Sarah Kim led the final pursuit squadrons. She had become the face of human resistance, the pilot who had killed more Krell than anyone else. Her fighter was fast, and she flew it like it was an extension of her own body. When the order came to pursue the fleeing enemy, Sarah did not hesitate. She led her squadron into the jump gates, following the Krell ships. The final battles were swift and brutal. The Krell ships, damaged and demoralized, could not stand against human forces that were determined and coordinated. One by one, the alien ships were destroyed. Some tried to jump to their home world early, but the human forces had learned how to damage the jump gates themselves. Ships that tried to escape found their path blocked. Admiral Patricia had made the decision before the final battles began. This war would end completely. The Krell would not return. The Krell would not send another invasion force. The Krell would learn that when they crossed into human space, they would not return. In the end, only 3 Krell ships escaped. 3 out of 300. Those 3 ships made it back to Krell space and delivered their report to the political leaders. The report told of a species that would destroy their own structures to save their world. A species that would follow a fleeing enemy through space itself. A species that valued the protection of their home more than their own lives. A species that could not be conquered through conventional warfare. The Krell leadership received the reports and made their decision. Earth would be left alone. The humans would not be invaded again. The humans were too dangerous. The cost of invading them was too high. 1 month after the final battle, the Earth Defense Council convened. This was not a military council. This was a political council, made up of leaders from every major nation on Earth. They were meeting to discuss what humanity's future would be in the galaxy. Jake Morrison was invited to address them. He was brought to the conference chamber in Geneva, where representatives from every nation waited to hear what the commander of human forces would say. Jake Morrison stood before them, and he spoke simply. He did not use fancy words or political language. He spoke like a soldier spoke, direct, simple, honest. "We have proven that we can defend ourselves," Jake said. "We have proven that we can fight. We have proven that we can defeat enemies that are more technologically advanced. But victory in battle is not the same as victory in the galaxy. We need the other species to understand something. We need them to understand that humanity is not to be taken lightly. We need them to understand that there are consequences for attacking Earth. What do you suggest?" The representative from China asked. Jake Morrison looked at the Galactic Communication Network. It was available in this room, connected to the rest of the galaxy. Messages sent on this network would reach thousands of star systems. "I want to send a message," Jake said. "I want to tell the galaxy what happened here. I want to tell them that the Krell invaded human space, and none of them survived to tell the tale." The council voted. The decision was unanimous. Jake Morrison was authorized to send the message. That night, Jake sat at the communication terminal and recorded his statement. He spoke in simple English, making sure his words were clear and easy to understand. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. I am sending this message to all civilized species in the galaxy. 3 months ago, an invasion fleet came to our world. 300 ships. The most advanced weapons. The most powerful army. They expected to conquer us easily. They expected us to surrender or to die. What they found was something different. They found a species that would rather die than surrender. They found a species that would destroy itself rather than allow invaders to take their home. The invasion has ended. The Krell fleet has been destroyed. Not a single Krell ship has returned to their homeworld to tell what happened here. This is the lesson for all those who would come to human space with weapons and conquest in their hearts. Do not come. Do not attempt to take what is ours. Do not believe that your technology can overcome our determination, because our determination is infinite. And we will do anything, sacrifice anything, to protect our world." The Krell did not understand this. They paid the price. Let others learn from their fate. Do not cross into human space with weapons drawn, because if you do, you will not return. The message was sent across the galaxy. It traveled to thousands of star systems. It reached the ears of the Krell survivors. It reached the ears of the members of the Galactic Council. It reached everyone who had ever heard of the Earth. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. They had ignored Earth before. They had thought of humans as primitives. But now they had to face the truth. Humans had defeated an invasion that should have been unbeatable. Humans had sacrificed everything to protect their world. Humans were not primitives. Humans were not to be taken lightly. The Council made a decision. Earth would be granted protection under galactic law. Earth would be given a seat on the Council. Humans would be treated as equals to the other species. It was a victory that Jake Morrison had not expected. But it was a victory that made sense. In a galaxy where civilizations fought for resources and power and dominance, a species that would willingly sacrifice everything to protect their home was rare. Such a species demanded respect. 6 months after the final battle, the orbital station had been rebuilt. Humanity had expanded its presence in space. The military was being reorganized and modernized. Earth was no longer a minor world. Earth was a player in the cosmic order. Admiral Patricia Lynch and Jake Morrison stood together in the observation deck of the space station, looking down at Earth below. "We survived," Patricia said. "We did more than survive," Jake replied. "We proved that humans matter. We proved that we can defend ourselves. We proved that there is a cost to invading our world. What do you think they will do now?" Patricia asked. "Will they attack again?" "No," Jake said. "The message has been heard. The message will echo across the galaxy for 1,000 years. Humans defended their world. Humans destroyed an invasion fleet. Humans crossed into the darkness of space to ensure that no enemy could ever report back home. The galaxy has learned what it means to be human. And they will remember. They will remember for generations." Patricia nodded. She understood. The war had ended. But the legacy of the war would last forever. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, not with diplomacy or trade or cultural exchange. Humanity had announced itself with the complete and utter destruction of anyone who dared to invade. From this moment forward, any being in the galaxy who heard the phrase, "they crossed into human space," would understand exactly what it meant. It meant invasion. It meant failure. It meant death. No survivors. No reports. No escape. The legend of Earth had begun. The legend of humanity would echo across 1,000 star systems. And any would-be invader would think twice before bringing weapons to human space. Because they all knew the truth now. They all knew what happened to those who crossed into human space. None of them survived to tell the tale.